Hello, everybody. I hope you're doing well. All the kids went back to school recently, so the plague is going around, and I've been very sick. But I think I can breathe well enough now that I can actually tell the story for this painting, which has been done for over a week. So, do you guys remember our mermaid? Do you remember the Gilded Cage mermaid? So, this is kind of a continuation of her story. Not kind of, it is a continuation of her story. Uh, First, does anybody else's paintings, if you don't have a very specific reference, start out with like a Roman nose? I really love that, like, that straight bridge. No, there's something about it. Anyway, moving on. So, quick recap. And here I'll show you some of the previous paintings so that we can all be on the same page. Um, we had a mermaid, and her story was that she'd made friends with a boy that she saved, and they kind of grew up together. She was already like a person, but he was a boy, and he grew up, and she kind of trusted him, and they were friendly. And he kind of convinced her that, hey, you seem really fascinated with human stuff in the woods and things like that. He's like, how about I put you in like a contraption and I can push you around and you can go see trees and you can touch them. It'd be a real cool thing, right? So he does that. He brings a contraption. It's kind of like a wheelbarrow with water in it, but there's a covering on it because mermaid, right? So he grabs her from the ocean and he takes her out and he shows her some trees and berries and bushes. And maybe he does like a couple of trips, right? Like maybe it's not the very first time he took her out of the water to like check out trees and stuff. But at some point, he takes her further and further away from the water. And she's a mermaid, right? She's not the kind of mermaid that turns to a person when she dries out. She has a fin, right? All the time she has a fin. Maybe there are exceptions. I don't know. We read her own lore. We can figure something out. But she's just a mermaid. She just has a fin all the time. At least right now. We don't know. So he takes her further on land and takes her back to his manor. Because, of course, he has money. Because, I don't know. You can't have a manor and build a private mermaid tank on your entire property unless you have money, which is what he did. So he kept her in like a glorified fish tank that he built within his manor walls that connect to all of his little fountains outside of his mansion. So she has a little bit of freedom to roam around, and he considers that awesome. He's like, look, you can go see the gardens, and you can interact with the plants, and you can kind of swim around with me. It's like a covered lazy river that connects all of the fountains and leads her to like an indoor room inside the house, right? But over time, she obviously is depressed and wants to go back. Also, she doesn't communicate like words. There's no like direct speech. It's like telepathic almost, right? Or exactly, maybe. I don't know. So she can sing, but she doesn't have like human language, and her voice doesn't work the same. So she could sing, but it's not like normal human speech. Anyway, not the point. She wants to go home, and he's just not really getting that she wants to go home, her supposed friend. And he's getting older and older, and she's getting more and more depressed and staying the same age. And she finally stops just kind of interacting with him. And so he lets her water get all gross and nasty and stops caring for her in hopes that she will come out of the water and see him again. Basically, he's trying to chase her to the surface by letting the water get really disgusting instead of having it cleaned and taken care of. And it's not like a normal ecosystem because he didn't set it up that way. It was kind of like a glorified saltwater pool. So there's no care happening for it. Terrible conditions. When he reaches old age, he has a grandson that comes back to visit him, and the grandson is really musically inclined and not really interested in the family fortune or dealings. And he comes back and he's like, hey, grandpa, we got to clean up all this water. You've got like, I don't know, breathing problems and you're old, and like you can't live surrounded by nasty gross water. Like it smells like something died in there. And he's like, I can't, Jack. It's Jack. His name is Jack. His grandson's name is Jack. Jackie, I can't do that because my mermaid's in there. And he's like, Grandpa, there's no mermaid. There is a mermaid. She's there. And she's been starving and living in swamp, gross, nasty, rotten, sitting water. So she's not doing super hot, right? That's the original storyline. Jack comes into the picture and he ends up finding out that she's actually in there, and he gets like a truck, puts some sort of like water tank in it, and he takes her back to the ocean and sets her free, right? That's Jack's sole purpose in this story. He's like, we can't do this. We gotta let her go. So he does that. He takes her back to the ocean and sets her free. Now, she can't let it go. She can't let the manor go. She can't let the family go. And we don't really know why yet. But she's kind of hanging around the coast. And then in some of our other stories, I don't know if you're familiar with my other stories, feel free to check them out. Some of our other stories, our universe, our I don't want to say God, but like our higher power has been kind of opening portals in places because our two worlds are starting to bleed back into each other. There's the magic world and there is the like human non-magic. It's been completely devoid of most magic for a really long time. The two worlds were separated. So our higher power has been opening portals and things have been bleeding back into each other. Magic has been bleeding into the human world, and they're kind of becoming one again. And it's kind of almost coincidental, but all of these portals, maybe it's coincidental. We don't know. We read our own lore. We'll find out. Some of these portals keep opening back up in the oceans around where our mermaid currently is. And she's able to get peeks into the garden and around the house of that she'd been kept captive in, and the family that she had been holding her captive. Why she's still interested, why she's not just cutting and running, we don't know yet. But the portals are going to start opening up closer and closer to the manor. Personally, I don't know that I would take the risk and, go through a portal and risk being stuck right back where I'd been stuck for like, I don't know, 50 plus years, 70 years. I don't know. Lots and lots of years. I don't know that I would take that risk, hoping that the portals won't close behind me seems risky. But that's what she's going to do. She's going to follow the portals in and she's going to have some sort of hope. She keeps being drawn back, so she feels like she has to go. And this painting specifically is kind of one of those portals opening up in maybe one of the fountains or one of the ponds that are on the grounds. It has a little bit of plant growth, so it's probably in one of the ponds. I like to think that since Jack moved back to the property, he has cleaned up the water and the tanks. His grandfather had hoped to stay home. I kind of like the idea that she showed back up and she's kind of haunting them. She's not, she has not passed away, but the ghost of her is the way that Jack's grandfather is looking at it. The ghost of her is swimming through all of the fountains and various ponds on the property and just kind of tormenting him. And I think he's come to realize, he messed up. He was not treating her well. Jack was like, Grandpa, you left her in sewage. Like that is the worst kind of torment. And look, not a great guy. Like he was very selfish, thought mostly of himself and didn't think of her as like a living human thing, despite claiming to have loved her. But now she keeps showing back up and he's like, I know she can't be here. So, maybe she died and the ghost of her is tormenting me, or my mind is playing tricks on me, Jack, because, I was so terrible to her and now this is my karmic retribution, right? But Jack doesn't believe that that's what's happening because he's seeing her too and he's the one who set her free. So he's like, I did not do anything. I set her free and I don't think this is the ghost of her. Like, she was in rough shape when I let her go, but I don't think, like, first off, if you were dead, would you go back to the place where you were like, if you had any choice in the matter? Like, I understand that like traumatic things happen and maybe that's where people haunt because that's where they died, whatever. She didn't die there. She was taken back. She was taken back to the sea. So if she had died, it would be in the sea. Although that was where she had been tormented. It all comes back around to like what you think a haunting is. None of this matters. Moving on. So she keeps going back to the property. She's going through these little portals. Is this by design? Is there like some sort of plan behind these portals? Or is it just that all of these little doors are opening up in an attempt to allow magic to bleed back into the human world, right? Is that what's happening? So I think that probably the human world couldn't survive completely without magic. And so maybe whenever the two worlds were split, there were certain areas that were devoid of a lot of human interference and contact. that magic was still allowed to kind of trickle in, like the bottom of the sea. Maybe that explains why mermaids stuck around when all of the fae ended up somewhere else. Various places in the woods, maybe. There's so many stories of people going missing, of strange things being out in the woods. I think that's what makes sense to me. Okay, so we have all these portals being open. Our mermaid keeps finding portals open that allow her to go back to visit. Why do you think it is that she's going back to visit? Those of you who think it's romance, you're going to be sorely disappointed. Jack is not a romantic figure. Jack is, dun dun dun, her grandson. So she had a child with the man who held her captive. Wonder how that happened. You can all guess, I'm sure. But the child that she had with him was not mermaid enough to stay in the water with her, and in fact was not mermaid enough to really have many of the attributes. Genetics are weird. We don't know how that happens. Sometimes things like that happen. But her grandson, Jack, is very mermaid-like. His affinity for music isn't just a normal human interest or genetic trait. There's something more to it. And his understanding of her and knowing she's there and kind of being able to understand what was going on comes from like a connection that's there. Now, I don't know that Jack is necessarily going to be capable of going into the sea. We'll have to see what happens when more magic bleeds into the world. That's kind of where we're at. That's where this painting is she's gone back to keep an eye on her grandson. Yeah. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you're interested in the story. As always, I really appreciate you being here and listening to my stories and watching me paint. I hope to see you with the next video. And I hope you guys have a great week. Stay healthy. It's plague season. Bye, everyone.